All right, guys, it's been a few weeks since I checked in. It's probably been a month or so since I did my last report, so I wanted to give you a heads up, kind of what's going on out on the lake. The reason that you haven't seen me I haven't been posting every few weeks is just simply because not a lot has changed out there. If you've been out on the water, you know it's the same kind of frustrating lake that it's been the last couple of years in the summer months. You know, we're all expecting fish to school up and be in big schools out on the ledges, and it simply just hasn't happened the last couple of years. Not saying you can't catch some out there. There's some to be caught, but for you guys that's looking for those big schools like myself, it's just not happening out there. So not a lot's changed in the last month. That's why you haven't seen me check in. But I want to give you kind of a rundown on what's going on out here right now, and then kind of talk a little bit about what I think is going on with the lake and the changes that I've seen over the last year. For the most part, obviously I'm shooting in my shop today. I've got the air conditioner running and it's super hot outside. We're looking at like 110, 120 degree heat indexes the rest of the week. So it's crazy hot out there. So even in the good old days when fishing was really good, you know, July and August are two of the toughest months on the calendar year as far as I'm concerned to catch fish on the Tennessee River. They just get a lot of pressure, and you know, fishing just gets really tough. And that hasn't changed, you know, ever. It's always been like that. It's always really tough in the summer months. But I'm starting to see some signs. I mean, looking at 84 to 87 degree water temperatures every day that I'm out there. I'm on the water just about every day. So I'm seeing 84, 87 degree water temps, you know, pretty slack current. I'm starting to see some signs the last few days of some turnover. And you'll see that when you go out and everything's just dead stagnant in the water. The water is not moving at all. It'll just be real flat, a lot of stuff floating. I'm seeing a lot of muscle meat that's floating up to the surface. And usually that's signs of a late summer turnover. And what that will do for the fish is that it kind of puts them in a weird mood for a few days until they kind of get settled back down to where the normal oxygen levels are. And what will happen is those fish will come shallow. Anytime that happens, you know, people think late summer, they think those fish go super deep. And there's some fish that stay out there, I'm sure, but those fish have to come up for oxygen. And I think that they get up a lot shallower than a lot of us think they do. The fish will start getting on some shallow bars out on the main lake where there's stumps, and if there's any kind of fresh laydowns or fresh brush that people have put in, those fish will get around it because there's oxygen in the water around those green leaves. Or you know, like I say, if it's a tree that's laid over or something, there'll be bait in it, and usually you'll find the fish in it. So the last couple of weeks, what I've seen is a lot of the fish that have started to come up shallow, I'm catching them on a topwater. For the first little while, first couple hours in the morning, you want to throw a topwater bait, and you'll catch a few. You'll just catch a handful if you really run a gun and hit a lot of spots. The 6 Sense Dogma, any kind of walking baits. This is a bone color that I throw. I mean, it's no secret out there, you know, that we throw a bone color walking bait, a spook, some of the evergreen baits, a lot of different brands out there, but whatever you like, that'll get you a few bites right now. And this time of year, we're getting late enough in the year, those fish starting to get up on the banks and move shallow again. This is the Berkeley Chopo, Whopper Plopper, that bait that you can cover a lot of water. Now, I wouldn't recommend, and I've said this before, if you don't have any wind, I don't have any confidence in that. I'm not saying you can't get a bite on it, but I think one of the reasons that they bite that bait so aggressive in the wind is because they think it's going to get away from them, and that's why when you get a bite on this, they just absolutely clobber it. So topwater bait first couple hours in the mornings, and then I'm slowing down and fishing offshore brush piles. A lot of the fish up shallow. Early in the year, you heard me talk about the bait that started to show up on the bank. In laydowns, you can probably still catch a few fish doing that. From what I've seen, a lot of that's going away because that little bait, the little emerald shiners and stuff that's in the water, have actually started to migrate out to the mouths of the creeks. And if you idle around at the mouths of the creeks on any of the ditches and creek channels, either side of the lake at the mouths of the creeks, you'll start seeing a lot of that fry and stuff in the water. And I was talking about that turnover. You'll also see on your graph, if you pay attention to your electronics, you'll see just a haze in the water. It's just a weird, I don't know, it's just, I'm seeing signs. I'm no biologist. I don't know a whole lot about the way a lake turns over. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I just see signs of this every year, and I'm starting to kind of see that. Fishing will get really tough for a few weeks. And it's those fish just trying to transition, find that balance from that deep water to that shallow water where that oxygen level is, where they can, where they've got that oxygen. So that's kind of what's going on out here. There's no bait that's working better than others. Like I say, I'm throwing a topwater for first little while, and then like a Divine shaky worm from 6 cents on a shaky head. This is the Divine shaky head here, like a 1/4 or a 3/8 ounce. And then the ridge worm also. This thing's got, you can see on there how it's got like a flat tail. This thing really comes alive in the water. You're not going to get a lot of bites out there right now. I mean, you'll catch a handful of fish and you've had a pretty decent day. I mean, there's guys that still catching, I'm sure, numbers, but as far as what I can tell, there's not a whole lot of bites to be had, but you can still catch a few fish out there. And then a drop shot, or a Texas rig worm, Texas rig big worm. I throw a drop shot a lot with a little 6-inch robo worm on it in the brush piles, and I'm using that active target from Lawrence to really pinpoint those brush piles. And I've had a pretty good time the last couple of weeks really dialing that in and playing with that. So guys with the forward-facing sonar technology, take advantage of it, use it. It's a good time to go out there and learn, find the brush, and you can kind of scan around and look, see where it's at. But that's kind of the fishing. I mean, like I say, water temperatures in the mid-80s. It's close to 90 degrees. It wouldn't surprise me what you don't see that. Now, keep in mind, over the next couple of weeks, there'll be some fish that start to show up a lot shallower. They'll start getting back in the creeks, I'd say, anywhere where there's any kind of water coming in. We haven't had any kind of rains or anything like that, but from what I understand down south, there's some guys that's catching a lot of fish running way up in the creeks that are like, creeks that feed into the lake. Places like that where you can find a little bit cooler water, if you know where any springs or anything like that are, that's obviously good places to fish this time of year as well. But just touch on kind of the summer in a nutshell. Everybody's question is, why aren't the fish schooling up? What's going on with the lake? This is my take on it, and I've said some of these things before, but the signs that I'm seeing over the last couple of years, it looks to me like the lake is slowly, going uphill instead of going this way now. Instead of going downhill, we're seeing a lot more quantity. I'm not seeing the quality yet, but that's simply because a combination of a few things, obviously. Number one, we're missing about 2 or 3 years age class of fish that aren't there. So the years of catching those big stringers, you go out there now in the late summer months and you catch a 14 or 15 pound stringer is a good stringer, simply because there's not a lot of those quality 5-6 pounders in the lake like we had 5 to 8 years ago. So the carp are getting all the blame. Obviously there's still a lot of carp in the lake, it's no secret. Carp are not the only reason that the lake's fishing as tough as it is. It's a combination of the carp eat up all the plankton, therefore the shad don't have anything to survive on, lack of grass, also like I said, like I mentioned, the few years age class of fish that we're missing. So it's a combination. You throw all those into a big bowl and it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's, like I say, the good news is I'm seeing a lot more numbers of fish from spring to summer. Like right now, you can't really compare it because it's that really tough summertime bite right now. But will the fish ever get schooled up like they used to out there? I don't know. The lakes go through cycles and they go through changes. I've seen some of the best lakes in the country go through some tough times where you couldn't hardly catch them, and then all of a sudden it comes back better than ever. And I'm hoping that's what happens here on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. But until we get a population of fish back in the lake, some shad back in the lake, the reason those fish drove out there in the summertime was there's so many threadfin and gizzard that pushed them out there. Well, the bait's not out there till later in the summer now. And then it's about all over with. So unless they have a reason to go out there, they're going to stay up shallow. So that being said, it may turn into a shallow lake. It may turn into a smallmouth lake. We don't know. There's a good number of smallmouth coming back to the lake. We're seeing a lot more of them, fishing for them more than we ever have, in the spring months and in early summer months. So like I say, it's a combination of a lot of things. It's made the fishing the way it is out here. Still a good number of ways to catch fish throughout the year. My favorite time used to be June, and then Now we've got a lot of good spring months. April used to be one of the toughest months out here to fish because they're always in that kind of transition from that pre-spawn to the spawn. And now it seems like March and April are two of the best months out here as far as catching numbers of fish. And like I say, as the years go on, those fish change their habits, they change the bait source that they're on or where they live. A lot's going to change. So I'm kind of anxious to see what happens in the next few years. But that's kind of my thoughts. I give everybody that spiel that gets in the boat with me just so you're kind of aware on what's going on the lake. That way you don't have high hopes of coming down here and just catching a bunch of fish like we used to. Still some ways to catch fish, still go out and have a good time and catch fish. But that's kind of my thoughts on what's going on with the lake. I look for, like I say, we're kind of in the middle of that late summer, that really, really tough bite. And here in the next few weeks, hopefully, it's just now August, so summertime is, the heat of summertime is actually just now getting here. So it'll probably be another couple of months before we really start seeing any kind of fall activity or anything. But for now, if you're going out fishing, I would get up there fishing that shallower water. Don't pay as much attention to that deeper stuff. Like I say, they're in that 12 to 15 foot range right now in brush piles at the mouths of the creeks, but a lot of that's going to change if this lake is actually truly turning over, that I'm seeing signs of. Those fish will start getting up shallow in the water column. They'll suspend, they'll get hard to catch. But the best places to start looking is get out on those ridges, get out on those bars, and find some shallow cover. Anything in 4 feet or less, typically will have some bait around it and you can catch fish up there. So anybody looking for a trip, I've got some days open. I'm still running my electronics classes on the water, setting up graphs and stuff, selling boats up at High Tech Outdoors. So if you guys get a chance sometime, if you're in the area, come by, check us out. We've got Crestliner, Camus, Harris pontoons, and then the Abbott aluminum lines. Got a full line of electronics, accessories, everything up there. So come by and check us out at hightechoutdoors.com or stop by the shop there and see us. But I'll see you guys on the water.